Thanks, Maddie. Let me get back to where I'm supposed to be. Okay. Shanice Blair is a recent master's graduate in clinical mental health counseling from Walden University and is a co-coordinator for The Future Is Us. She leads grant management, collaboration and partnerships, and community engagement on various projects, such as the Equity and Access for All project with Causeway Galveston and Galveston Independent District. Shanice's previous work with Galveston community members as a case manager has given her insight into what barriers and resources there are in the community. Jonathan Warren is a former attorney and school liaison and is the Communities of Care co-coordinator for The Future of Us. He is passionate about achieving equality and equity for underrepresented students. Through work with collaborative partners, he hopes to change and implement policies and practices that will reduce classroom inequities, specifically school disciplinary issues. And last but not least, Samira Solomon works with The Future Is Us and just graduated from the University of Texas Medical Branch with her master's in public health. She recently spent her summer interning with the Department of Health and Human Services with the Administration of Children and Families in Washington, D.C., where she spent time learning about policy and how education and public health are interconnected. Samira's interests lie in early education and how to make the education system more equitable for young students of color. Welcome, Shanice, Jonathan, and Samira. We are going to hear from them now.
Hi, everyone. My name is Samira Solomon.
I'm Shanice Blair.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Warren.
And today we're going to be talking about kindergarten readiness and Black youth on Galveston Island.
So regarding kindergarten readiness and Black youth in Galveston, we will be covering GISD students and kindergarten readiness. How is kindergarten readiness measured and the requirements of early childhood centers? What affects kindergarten readiness levels of students, the importance, recommendations, and conclusions or questions and answers. The success of students in the education system is highly influenced by early childhood factors. The most prominent factor that plays a role in the success of students in the first years of their life is kindergarten readiness. Kindergarten readiness refers to the knowledge that the child obtains both in the home and in early childhood centers that prepares them for success in kindergarten and further in the education system. High levels of success in kindergarten are frequently correlated with parental involvement in the home and attendance in early childhood pre-K centers. Historically, Black students are found to demonstrate reduced levels of kindergarten readiness as compared to their white counterparts in measures of math, literacy, social skills, and motor skills. Specifically in Galveston, Black students are similarly left on the outskirts of kindergarten readiness. So looking at the data for the school year 2019 in GISD, 453 students were surveyed for the levels of kindergarten readiness. Of the 100 Black students in GISD that were examined, only 13% of those students were determined to be ready for kindergarten. Of the 100 white students in GISD that were examined, 49% of those students were determined to be ready for kindergarten. Even more, kindergarten readiness levels continue to decline for Black students. In school year 2020, only 12% of the Black students were found to be ready for kindergarten. Now, when looking at the background of the students, we see that nearly 80% of the students in GISD come from economically disadvantaged backgrounds, and of those students, a little over 26% were identified as being kindergarten ready. Additionally, a little over 31% of students in GISD were students who were learning English as a second language, and 38.5% of those students were identified as kindergarten ready. So what affects kindergarten readiness levels of students? There are a variety of factors, both inside and outside the classroom, that play an influential role in how students end up ready for kindergarten. And here's where I'll pass it to my colleague, Shanice.
Hello, The first factor that influences kindergarten readiness is experiencing adverse childhood experiences. Students who experience adverse childhood experiences, ACEs, such as poverty, food insecurity, domestic violence, or abuse, are faced with situations that reduce the capacity of parental involvement in creating a productive learning environment within the home. A report published by the American Academy of Pediatrics found the following in regards to early education readiness in children of diverse backgrounds. Children who have had 2 or more ACEs are 2.67 times more likely to repeat a grade compared to their peers without adverse experiences. 48% of low-income children are ready for school at 5 years of age, compared to 75% of children from moderate or high-income households. For Galveston, the 2010 census showed that 29% of people 25 years and older held a bachelor's degree, compared to 32% nationwide. A community survey in 2016 found that family violence and lack of access to mental health care and affordable, high-quality childcare contributed to child abuse and neglect. Analysis of Galveston County data show that the city of Galveston has higher rates of referrals to Child Protective Services than in League City, which is more populous, better educated, and has higher incomes. More data analysis of Galveston has found that in 2018, 88% of Galveston's city resident population of children younger than 5 were found to be characterized as economically disadvantaged. More than half of children younger than 5 in Galveston have the need for safe and enriching care while parents work, attend school, or employment training. And only 24% of Black students in Galveston Independent School District were classified as kindergarten ready. A second factor that influences kindergarten readiness is parental involvement. Parental involvement in early childhood plays a monumental impact on childhood success. Research has demonstrated that parental involvement in early childhood learning makes significant impacts on the child's kindergarten readiness levels and success. Parental involvement begins inside the home, with parents being the prominent source of learning and knowledge for young children. The American Academy of Pediatrics suggests early parental involvement in childhood learning that is focused on expanding language and cognitive skills, which can promote school readiness for students significantly. Examples of parental involvement activities to promote kindergarten readiness are listed. Parental involvement during the first few years of life is crucial to not only children's brain development, but also to preparing students for early academic success. Early parental involvement and the implementation of strategies such as consistent routines and child-centered activities like reading is necessary for encouraging kindergarten readiness levels for children. Limited parental education and experiencing trauma and adverse childhood experiences like poverty play a monumental role in a parent's ability to prepare their child for kindergarten. Research has found that white children are more likely than Black children to be read to or told stories in pre-kindergarten years. Young children of college-educated parents are surrounded by more books at home, while children of less educated parents see and have exposure to fewer books. On average, a typical middle-class child who has begun to read at home will have higher lifetime achievement than a typical low-income child who is taught to read only in school, even if each benefits from good curriculum, effective teaching, and high expectations. Lastly, attending a public or private pre-kindergarten program also influences kindergarten readiness. In Galveston, there are a handful of childhood education centers that parents have the option of enrolling their children in. The most popular options include Moody Early Childhood Center, East End Preschool, Ambassadors Preparatory Academy, Satori School, Trinity Episcopal School, and Odyssey Academy. The public school options include Odyssey Academy, Moody Early Childhood Center, East End Preschool, and Ambassadors Preparatory Academy. The private school options are Satori School, Trinity Episcopal School, Holy Family, Montessori School, a homeschool collaborative, and the East End Preschool. It is important to note that while there are a wide variety of options for childhood education centers, many operate as either a for-profit or nonprofit organization.
All right, so when we look at early childhood center enrollment on Galveston Island, a study assessing early childhood center enrollment on Galveston Island by ethnicity found that white, Asian, and Hispanic students were more likely to be enrolled in high-quality early childhood centers. In 2010, 282 or 3 of the 336 or approximately 84% of white students were enrolled in high quality childhood centers, compared to 230 of 401 or 57% of Black students who were enrolled in high quality early childhood centers. The same study found that high quality early childhood centers were likely to be for-profit centers, and local children who came from economically disadvantaged homes were less likely to engage in higher quality for-profit early childhood centers. This puts students on the outside of opportunities that prepares them for success in kindergarten and further perpetuate disparities experienced by Black students in the education system. So when we look at the requirements of early childhood centers, we see that in Texas, there are more than 9,000 early child care education centers. There are different legal requirements for early childhood education institutes based on the type of facility. For center-based early childhood education programs, Texas law sets restrictions and limits on the number of children a caregiver can supervise, and mandates that a certain caregiver to child ratio is maintained based on several factors, including the size of the center, the age of the children, and the size of the group. In addition, the state of Texas requires that the staff of center-based early childhood centers must have a high school degree with at least 30 hours of child development training, with the required annual renewal of training that provides staff with 24 hours of annual professional development. Educators are also required to be trained in first aid and CPR for infants, children, and adults. Public pre-K programs are on the opposite end of the spectrum. For the past few years, Texas public pre-K programs did not have mandated class size, class limits, or teacher to student ratios. In 2016, it was recommended that class sizes be limited, and after 6 long years, Texas finally approved a class size cap of 22 students per class this year. In addition, the state provides curriculum guidelines that are designed to prepare pre-K students for kindergarten. However, public pre-K programs are not mandated to follow them, and they remain optional. As for educators, pre-K teachers are required to hold a bachelor's degree and have a certificate in teacher preparation program. Unlike the yearly trainings that are required of center-based early childhood centers, public pre-K programs require that professional development training be taken once every 5 years. And neither the training nor the certificates that are required of educators in public pre-K programs needs to be in early childhood. So looking at removal from the classroom and kindergarten readiness is often used as a predictor for the level of academic success that students will achieve as they move throughout the education system. Kindergarten readiness provides students with a framework to build social, emotional, and behavioral skills that prepare them for the education system. Lack of readiness from early education can set students up for a world of consequences, both academically and socially. Students who enter the education system with low levels of success are more likely to be removed from the classroom and deal with increased rates of expulsions and suspensions. Removal from the classroom further contributes to low readiness and academic success rates for students. Baltimore City Public Schools, did a study that aimed to understand the long-term consequences of students who lacked kindergarten readiness. Researchers found that students who were more likely to be classified as not ready for kindergarten were predominantly young Black males from low-income communities. Those same students were more likely to be expelled at least once between kindergarten and 5th grade, and were more likely to be held back. Students who had low kindergarten readiness levels also had significantly decreased social behavioral readiness levels. So how is kindergarten readiness measured? The two systems that are used for kindergarten readiness in Texas are the Texas KEA and the TPRI or the TEJASLE. So the Texas KEA stands for the Texas Kindergarten Entry Assessment System. The Texas KEA was developed in collaboration between the Texas Education Agency and the U.S. Department of Education. The Texas KEA serves as a holistic tool to measure kindergarten readiness levels based on 6 different domains: language, literacy, STEM, social emotional learning, executive function, and academic motor skills. The tool is first administered in the beginning of the 6 to 8 weeks of the academic school year and is meant to understand and evaluate a child's ability to succeed in kindergarten based on those six different domains. Once the child takes the screening tool, teachers are given one of 2 results: on track kindergarten ready or or not ready. If a child is identified as not kindergarten ready, districts may choose to complete further diagnostics and work to get the child to a level of kindergarten readiness. In GISD, the Texas KEA only measures for the core subjects and does not currently include the measure of social emotional learning. Without the measurement of social emotional learning, educators are missing a critical piece in understanding kindergarten readiness. The social emotional learning domain measures both social and emotional competencies, as well as emotional management, and can serve as an essential part of understanding students and can give educators an insight into any learning disabilities students might be dealing with, such as dyslexia. Previously, the TPRI was used throughout Texas and in GISD. The TPRI is a reading assessment designed to understand student levels of kindergarten readiness according to reading development. The Tejas Ley is a Spanish version of the TPRI for Spanish-speaking students. Both of these tests for things such as letter sound, blending, on-site rhymes, word reading, and reading accuracy. The TPRI was a primary measure of screening for kindergarten readiness for years before the transition to the Texas KEA. While it was effective in understanding reading capabilities of kindergartners, the TPRI did not provide a holistic approach to understanding the full picture of kindergarten readiness in children in the same way that the Texas KEA does. So why is this important? Currently, nearly 90% of Black students in GISD are not kindergarten readiness. Kindergarten readiness is a major indicator of students' future success in the education system, and kindergarten readiness levels remain decreased for Black students both in Galveston and in Texas. So what are some things that we recommend? Our first recommendation is encouraging the Texas Kindergarten Entry Assessment System, or the Texas KEA, to focus on social emotional development. Like we mentioned previously, the addition of the social emotional development can give educators the opportunity to understand students from a holistic perspective and give insight to any learning disabilities that students might be dealing with. Our second recommendation is giving low-income minority parents opportunities to engage students and provide more parental involvement inside the home. Like we mentioned, parental involvement in early childhood is a key determinant to academic success for students. The establishment of parental involvement programs so parents from different communities can understand the importance of incorporating reading and advanced vocabulary from an early age is critical to ensuring early success in the education system. Early parental programs should emphasize the role of the parent in the early academic success of young students and how certain factors such as trauma can affect students' academic development. Strategies should include providing parents with reading materials, basic mathematics, and basic learning toys for children to help them reach early markers of success early in age. And lastly, our last recommendation is reworking GISD pre-K policy and requirements for public and pre-K programs so that students who are in public pre-K programs are not left on the outskirts of early childhood success in the same way that they currently are. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, we will be answering them now.
Thank you all so much. That was really important information to hear your 3 demands. Samira, I'm going to put you on the spot. Can you go over those 3 demands really fast again, or those 3 recommendations?
Yeah, so our first recommendation was encouraging the Texas KEA to include the social emotional part of or encouraging GISD to include the social emotional part of the Texas KEA. Mm-hmm. That was a really important factor because as children grow and develop, the insight of how they're developing emotionally, how they are dealing with behavioral issues, those are insights that teachers need from an early age and things that parents even need from an early age. So that's the fact that that's missing from the Texas KEA assessment right now within GISD is a huge thing that we're recommending. And then more parental support and for parents who are from minority houses and from low-income houses. There's so much that can be done for those parents to really support and prepare their students for success inside the home. And those are things that we really want to help see. We want Black students to really prepare for.
What
within white.
Oh,
I'm so sorry. No,
I
go
was
ahead.
going to ask, what are some of those supports that are important for minority students coming from minority homes for those parents to get?
The biggest thing that's important is reading to your child. Mm-hmm. So we see a lot of differences with how students from wealthier households, how they are coming to kindergarten prepared versus students from low-income households and how they're coming to kindergarten ready. So students who come from wealthier households, they tend to have more of a more expanded vocabulary because their parents are reading to them, they're engaging them in conversations, just very basic things like that. So that's the biggest thing, is reading to your children, engaging them in daily conversations. That is really a huge factor that parents can help out with for determining success inside the home. And if Jonathan has anything to add, I think he does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and another thing is following up Samira, is just access to the books. Yeah. The research is showing that depending on where you live and the economic status of where you live can determine even the access to the books that you have. There are some neighborhoods that on average have access to a negative amount of books, as in some wealthier neighborhoods, which have an average of 100 books per child per square mile kind of thing.
And another thing too is with the availability of the parent to be or caregiver to be in the home. And so if they're not able to afford to be home, like with the assessment that we've done, it was found, concern was expressed that parents who need a 2 8-hour job are not able to have the additional time needed to give their child the attention that they need or support that they need while they're in school, and even to help build them up for that. So if you're working 1,000 jobs, you're not able to provide your child the support and have those conversations and that one-on-one social skill and cognitive development.
Even to the point where the type of job you have, if you have a blue collar job versus you're a pencil pusher, the type of conversations you'll have with your child when you get home and the type of work that you do when you get home all goes into the rearing of the child and their pre-K readiness.
Yeah, so parental involvement looks very different for students who are from low-income houses versus students who are from higher income houses.
Yeah, and before you go to that third recommendation, because I don't want to lose that, but I do want to just piggyback a couple of things y'all just said and put a pin in them, because, you know, just recognition that people who work certain jobs just don't have the same luxury and privilege to be able to go to schools like some of the rest of us do, right? They may not be making living wages. And then also paid time off might not be a thing for them. And so that's why those types of policies, those are the types of policies we need to advocate for. And we saw in the pandemic an inequity about who was able to work from home and who wasn't, right? And so, you know, the same communities, the same households are disproportionately impacted by, you know, the worst challenges. And so I just wanted to kind of just really note what you said. And Jonathan, when you jumped in to talk about access to books, that's where I was going next. So that's so important. But we know there are a lot of programs out there and projects out there that are really trying to, you know, bring access to households with lower incomes to provide books to those families. And I'm hoping that you guys have some access to those things in Galveston. And I know you know, Shanice, if anybody else. So there is a question from the audience. I want to draw the audience Q&A in. They said, such a heavy lift. Do you think it would be beneficial to create programs for parents throughout pregnancy to encourage reading? Is it feasible? Downstream for sure, but changing attitudes about reading may help the child, considering the time it may take to change policies that are at the root of the problem. That was a lot. You unpack it how you will, and I would love for all of you all to weigh in on it. And I can begin.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think it's definitely a possibility. I think pregnancy it's a very interesting time in itself, and I think post-pregnancy is a very interesting time in itself as well, especially with mothers dealing with postpartum and all the emotions and stuff that go through that, and also raising a whole baby. But yes, these are things that really can be implemented from such an early age, and I think our biggest thing is preparing these students from pre-K and early on, and being able to help the parents as well. Like, if we don't want parents to not be able to give their students the resources that they need because they're from low income houses. But it definitely is a thing that's going to take some time. If any of my other colleagues want to expand on that.
I don't know much about prenatal care or development, but I do know, I think that a child is listening while they're inside.
Yeah.
And so, like, if you're like encouraging that from the beginning while they're inside developing, and it just makes sense. And especially because the doctor's office is where so much care is given. So if it's talked about maybe at those OBGYN midwife appointments, whatever it may be, to talk about the importance of literacy and encouraging it, maybe connecting the parents there with books and like tools that they can use to prepare themselves to help their child grow where they're at, I think would be an excellent idea.
Definitely. I think. No, I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
I would just, this issue, like many of these issues, they're all encompassing. And so, we want to focus on the overall mental health of the community. And we start to prune our focus by focusing on Black students of color, and their mental health. And we try to alleviate the intensity from the stresses of the school to prison pipeline. But we do that by trying to close that achievement gap between Black students and white students and non-white students. But to do that, we have to deal with pre-K readiness, because a lot of the research is showing that a student's overall academic success, whether they can go to graduate school and be a doctor or whether they drop out before they're in high school, a lot of that is determined before they step foot into kindergarten. So, and then another issue with Black mental health, period, is just the lack of research. So you ask a question about, is it good for mothers to start learning this child rearing techniques while they're pregnant? I would say, let's get some funding behind it and find out, because that's what we need to do. A lot of the research just isn't done yet. And so to find out the best way to alleviate a lot of the stresses on our people is to do the research. So I would love to see if that is something that would, can alleviate this problem of pre-K readiness.
Definitely. And I think also like the incorporation of helping parents helping their students get pre-K ready can be on the doctor physician side with parents as well. I think doctors are in a unique position to help parents look for certain markers of success from an early age. So I think whether it's from pregnancy or not, or post-pregnancy, or if it's from a young age, I think having that holistic approach to it, not only from the school side, but also maybe from the physician side, where, pediatricians are going to help students or help parents, see what markers their students need to be hitting when it comes to either social emotional development, reading, communicating. And I think there are certain things that pediatricians do look for health-wise, but like Jonathan said, there is a lot of research and development that can be put into that area to see what we can do to make things more equitable for our Black students.
Thank you. Somebody typed in chat, I'm sorry, in the Q&A, and it's just a comment. They have less ACEs too, and I'm not sure what that was in reference to, but if you want to type more, we can make sure the presenters get that comment. Another question, has any data indicated that lower reading proficiency in kindergarten causes students to shut down or act out in class, therefore increasing disciplinary issues or infractions? So do you know of any data that correlates lower reading skills with more disciplinary actions or issues?
Yeah, so we included in our presentation, Baltimore City Public Schools did a study on students who were identified as not kindergarten ready and how it affected their success and their, I guess, like their discipline throughout as they moved throughout the education system. And they found that the students who were marked as not kindergarten ready, as they moved through the education system, they were more likely to be removed, expelled from the school, suspended, and just overall like taken out of the classroom. The same study also showed that those students were more likely to be from low-income houses, and they were more likely to be young Black men. So like kindergarten readiness is a huge indicator of success as students move throughout the education system, and it can affect every aspect of a student's ability to thrive inside the school.
Yeah, Jonathan, Shanice.
And I don't know the data for it, but to me, it makes sense, because if a child is feeling that they aren't a good reader, or if perhaps they've gotten that from their peers or from their teacher, then that will reduce their self-efficacy, how they feel about themselves, and if they feel capable in being able to read. And so I feel like that it could cause a child to feel or behave a certain way because they're not feeling that they're capable. They're not feeling that that is their space for them. And we had a conversation recently about this, like children not feeling like being put on the spot to read, like in public in front of their peers, can cause so much anxiety. When I was doing student interning, providing therapy services at one of the schools here for an elementary school, I think she was in the 4th grade. And we were reading a Jenga block, and it was a paragraph, and she was like, I don't like reading that much words. It stresses me out. And I was like, okay. And so that was some reading I learned was something that really stressed her out. And so that's something that she was struggling with in school. And so it can really do something to a child, how they feel about themselves, which influences how they act.
And to reinforce both of my colleagues' points, implicit bias can still be an affect pre-K students and affect their ability to be school ready. We were just talking about an article. There's some data from the Review of Education, Pedagogy, and Cultural Studies, and it shows that of pre-K preschool programs, 6% reported suspending out of school at least one preschool child. Black children represent 18% of preschool enrollment, but 40% of the preschool children suspended once, 48% of those suspended twice. So even in terms of trying to take care of issues that alleviate school to prison pipeline, they become intersectional, and we have to go back, still fix those issues to fix another issue to take care of the school to prison pipeline. It's a lot.
Yeah. I don't see a lot more questions in the chat, but I do want to go to some of what folks put. I'm sorry, in the Q&A, I don't see any additional questions right now. I'm just going to check again really fast. But I wanted to go to some of the things that folks were sharing in chat while you all were speaking. Miss Whittle Rogers was very active. But Whittle was really commenting on what you were speaking of, Samira, about standardized tests. She says, individuals have been protesting these standardized tools for years with them being biased. I've noticed that strategies to promote reading in schools have almost disappeared. Phonics is not widely used anymore and may have been replaced with the pass the test mentality. The test does not take into account the factors that may impact test performance. This is so sad. Any response?
Standardized testing is a huge, it's always been something that's been like very back and forth with, but personally, I think standardized testing always puts students of colors on the outside of it, because it's just the mentality of putting students on a, like, you know, on a graded scale of how they perform in compared to their other counterparts, without really assessing, you know, what this, how students of color are even able to perform with these tests is it's just insane. But yes, a lot of standardized testing nowadays is going to just pass fail, which I think is amazing. It's an amazing thing. And even in Texas, like with GISD, they used to do the TPRI, which was just a reading assessment, and they've since transitioned to the Texas KEA, which has been looking at everything. But again, they have missed out with the social emotional learning. But yes, standardized testing is always a huge point of conflict.
Yeah.
And to piggyback off that, one of the things that the Future of Us is starting to emphasize is an African-centered pedagogy. And one of the tenets of that is to get rid of standardized testing and implement ways in which Black youth, students of color learn specifically to help them learn the things that they need to learn, either through cultural responsive education or otherwise.
Yes. Tamara, when you were, I think it was you speak, no, it was you, Shanice, when you were talking about the young girl, you would go to school and she was fearful of reading. So much of reading is about confidence. And I'm always about confidence. It's about children having the right supports, and someone to be patient with them. And my baby girl, who's 24 now, I remember she was so shy, and me and my extroverted self never thought that one of my children would be super shy, and she was fearful, and she just needed to have her confidence built up. And she would do this thing where she would say, when we would sit down and read, she'd say, "You read, mommy," because she didn't want me to know she was scared to read. And I would say, "Well, I'll do this. I'll read a page, but you read a page." And then, over time, it just took her longer. It wasn't that she couldn't read. It just, she needed more time and she needed more patience than her brother. And I just believe, just like adults, like when you said, Shanice, a lot of children are scared, I'm like, it's just like all of us. Like, how many adults that, they said the biggest fear in the world is of public speaking, but yet we want to showcase kids to read, out loud to their peers and to us. And a lot of kids just need more one-on-one. And that's my hope, that all children get the supports they need to be strong readers and, to be able to thrive, right? Because I believe all children can thrive, right? I wanted to read some of the hopes that folks shared in the chat for their community. And this was someone from Galveston County, I think is Ricci or Ricci, and forgive me if I'm saying that wrong. One wish for children in my community, Galveston County, would be to have access to the resources and opportunity children have in more affluent communities, right? So that's a vision for equity. And I appreciate that. Thank you. From Whittle, she says, to grow up in a community that nurtures and supports them. And community to her, meaning all systems, family and schools. Yes. We gotta dismantle, we gotta break up some of the things going on in schools for our children to thrive. And hand claps on that, high fives and all. And then, somebody else said a centralized place in the community where they can go to feel safe, right? Children need to feel safe to thrive, right? And so those are beautiful visions that folks shared in the chat. I want to thank our three presenters for all the insights and perspectives you've given to us in this workshop. I'm just going to...
Jonathan has something to say.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, just real quick, because I know we're closing out. I just wanted to let everybody know, in this fight for educational justice, equality, equity, to please be bold and not timid, and to not back down, and to always tell truth to power, because this is something that we have been fighting for since before emancipation. And once we were emancipated, we centered our fight for freedom around our education. So it's a divine fight for our people. So I pray that you all continue to support it and as intensely as possible.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Thank you, Jonathan. Be bold, be courageous, truth to power. Like our friends in Galveston that have been sharing, and Colorado. Samara is in Colorado now, trying to make it back to Texas. Wow. Thank you all so much again, Jonathan, Shanice, Chris, I'm sorry, Samira. I'm sorry, Samira. I am so sorry. I said your
It's
name
fine.
several times and you were so gracious and didn't connect.
It's fine.
I caught it when I heard you say it. Samira, for sharing their work and lessons with us today. We know that early childhood phase and kindergarten is such a key development stage for children. That was also shared, a lot about that was shared in the Babies in Baytown workshop, and it was all about infant mental health and well-being. And a key takeaway from there is that it starts with supporting the parents and families. And so if you did not get to hear that one and you're here, that's another one I would highly suggest you go back and listen to. All the workshops will be available for 6 months. If you've registered and you're here, which everyone who's here had to register, so you'll have access to them again. Many thanks to everyone who joined us here today. My colleague Maddie has dropped the evaluation form into the chat. Please take a few minutes to fill that out. It helps us know how we did with Young Minds Matter this year. It was phenomenal. I am overwhelmed by all the content I've heard here today. The community members and especially the young people we heard from here. Remember, if you're seeking CEUs, you need to fill out the form in the chat. Thanks again, everyone, and I hope you will take a few minutes. I know everybody is getting late and folks are hungry and tired, but please join us for our closing session, which will start in about 15 minutes. It's at 5:30. Meet me there. I want to just close out the evening with everybody. And thank you all. Thank you so much for your time. Peace, everybody.
Thank you, Dana. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, y'all.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.